Okay, we're live, so we better be on our best behavior now. I'm going to share this right now to my, well, it's on my feed, so you guys should share it to your feeds, or if you want it to be on your feeds. I'm going to share it. Okay, so let's see.
I can get my,
It's always, for those people watching is for the second, it's always kind of a weird little,
there's a delay.
yeah, knowing exactly when you've transitioned to live and when you've not. So I'm going to share.
If you guys can help me just keep track of the chat if we've got people in the chat that ask questions.
Oh, no problem. Oh, they turned on the CC thing again. I don't want that there. Can I turn that off?
Trying to see where the live stream is.
It's on my Facebook page.
Yeah, for some reason.
Refresh, you should be all right.
Okay, yeah. That's fine.
And gosh, why isn't it not letting me oh, I guess I need to come up to
I always forget about that. Turn it on and off again.
let me go up to my
Oh yeah, it's got the closed captioning thing on again.
yeah, I just turned it off right now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sharing it to about time.
Oh, there we go. It's funny, there's a little bit of a delay, right?
Yeah, we're gonna make sure we don't swear, or if we're not swearing enough, or I'm not quite sure.
There's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does FC stand for?
What are you guys doing again? Hey, Adrienne. Okay, so I think I've shared it. I think I'm back to Susan Gerbic. And I need to turn the volume off each time.
Yep.
I think we're set. And there's apparently 6 people watching. I know 3 of
Oh,
them
great.
are right here on the screen. Hello.
Nice.
Watching. Okay, I'm no longer in charge.
Ah.
It's Janyce.
Well, I'm Janyce. I am co-founder of a website called facilitatedcommunication.org. And I've been doing videos on a YouTube channel called FCisNotScience. And today I've got Susan Gerbic and Adrienne Hill here to help me talk about rapid prompting method, which is a form of facilitated communication. And I just wanted to say that I met Susan and Adrienne through Skepticism. Susan runs a GSOW project about time. She does a lot of things with Wikipedia and what is the name of your YouTube channel? The Grief
Psychics Explained. Or if you're having trouble remembering that, I'm going with Psychic Sex Plane. Psychic Sex Plane is Psychics Explained.
Nice.
I think I'm going to get more viewers that way.
Nice. And I met Adrienne through a talk she did on Tourette syndrome and some of her skeptic work as well. And I don't know if you want to just give a little introduction about what you'd like to do and
What I like to do.
involved with.
That's getting to be a long list. Of course, there's Wikipedia editing. That's how I met Susan. And I also I'm going to give a plug to Richard Saunders and his Skeptic Zone podcast. So I'm a regular reporter on that podcast. So check it out.
Nice. So Susan has invited both Adrienne and myself to sort of talk about psychic mediums readings that she's found on YouTube. And as we were talking about that, we realized that there's quite a bit of overlap with facilitated communication. So we decided to try something new for my channel and talk about a video that deals with rapid prompting method. And I just want to give a brief description of what facilitated communication is and what rapid prompting method is. Facilitated communication is a technique that is being used with individuals with profound communication difficulties. So the idea is that a facilitator or an assistant helps support a child's communication by holding a letter board in the air and having them point to letters. Or another way to do it is they hold on to the person onto their wrist and they point to a letter board. Either way, And what the research is showing is that it's actually the facilitators who are controlling the communications and not the people with that are being facilitated. So I was a former facilitator. That's how I got involved with all this in 1990 or 92 is when I got involved with it, which is incredible to me that we're even still talking about facilitated communication, because it was debunked by 1995 in the United States. Actually, it was debunked in Australia. It started in Australia. It was debunked in Australia before it came over to the United States. So it's kind of like a virus, it just keeps spreading. What else do we need to know about it? A lot of people think facilitated communication died in the early mid 1995. There was in 1993. There was a program called Prisoners of Silence that, if you haven't seen that, it's still actually relevant today. And that was a documentary put out by Frontline that essentially debunked facilitated communication. But the problem is the people that are involved heavily with facilitated communication, and this is probably the overlap with the psychics, is that they believe in it so much that they continue on even though the science has debunked it. And today's facilitators actually won't test. The early facilitators were like, well, we're not really sure what we have, what we're dealing with, so let's test it and see what happens. And when the facilitator doesn't know the content of the messages, then the messages are based on what the facilitator knows and not what the individual who's being facilitated knows. And since those controlled studies came out, people got really upset. The proponents got really upset, and they stopped doing the testing. So now today's facilitators won't test, and they believe it's real because people using FC say it's real. So
they say it's wrong to test because testing is going to make them think that you're challenging them, right? Some logic of some sort.
Right. You're supposed to presume competence. And so that means if you test facilitated communication or want to test facilitated communication, then you're against people with disabilities. In fact, I co-wrote an article. I'm trying to remember the name. I wrote it down. Oh, I've been accused of epistemological violence against people with disabilities because I'm speaking out against facilitated communication. So you're either ableist or you're against people with disabilities, which just isn't true. It's the technique that there's a problem with the technique and not with the people who are being subjected to FC. That in my mind
are being taken from them. Their true voices are being taken from them, and some facilitators substituting their voice for them. So you're trying to give them back their voice.
Right. And a lot of the I'm looking at a lot of pro FC videos and stuff, and really what's happening is that instead of giving people a voice, in my mind, they're taking it away. They're taking that opportunity away for the person to be recognized for who they are and not what the facilitator thinks they should be. Yeah. And
the parents or the
and
school,
the parents,
whoever's enabling this.
Yeah. Well, the parents, I see it as a coping strategy and not a communication technique. It's the parents all of a sudden, like a lot of the early reports, and it's still true to some degree today, but the proponents have caught on to it, so they don't really admit this, but a lot of the early communications from people using FC was I love mom, I love dad, and all of a sudden they go from being in a life skills program to being college bound for example. And in recent years, we've actually had some people that have graduated from universities using facilitated communication. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have anything to add, or
I would add that I heard of facilitated communication from James Randi back in the day in the 90s. And of course, when I heard about it, I was kind of appalled. He showed how it wasn't really working, and he was it got tied to the psychic world because he was hired to come out and investigate to see if maybe the kids were sending the messages to their facilitator through psychic means. And so when he came in and said, no, we don't know that facilitated communication even works. Let's take care of that before we get to the idea that possibly there is a link to psychic ability. And they said, thank you, Mr. Randi, and sent him home. So when I heard about facilitated communication, and of course, then all the TV shows that came out, the ones you mentioned, and the other one, Prisoner's Silence, and then there was another one, wasn't it 2020, or what was it called? The other one that was really important. Anyway, so there was a couple specials on TV about facilitated communication. I thought, this is done. Okay, good, let's move on. And what we have since learned is that it didn't go away and it didn't get crushed. It just got debunked, and the community, the facilitated communication community, changed its name, started using different names. They went underground, and it's still there, and it's now rooting itself in. And because of the popularity, I don't know, can we call it the popularity of autism? Because of this,
well,
I don't even know how to explain that, but it's like you can't attack
More
facilitated-
awareness.
You can't,
about it.
yeah, you can't speak out against it without being like you're punching down or something. It's the victim, we're victimizing people. It's just a really interesting process that logic and science and the facts is just a joke, and we're supposed to go with emotion now and what is perceived as being correct. I think in the long run we're going to prevail on this, but anyway.
I hope so. Adrienne, you were an educator, retired, right? Educator. Did you see facilitated communication in your work, or have you come across it since then? Or
I had not. In fact, I think I was aware of it in the 90s because it was something that was in the news, and I'd forgotten about it. And then you came to one of my talks and asked me about facilitated communication with the Tourette community. And I have not seen it. I've never seen it. And yet there's a huge crossover between Tourette syndrome and autism. There's quite often dual diagnosis. It's not, I mean, a huge percentage of people with Tourette syndrome, but people with autism often do have tics and tic-like behaviors and obsessive compulsive behaviors. So there's a lot of crossover between the two diagnoses in similarities in communication skills, etc. You don't necessarily see people with Tourette syndrome who have no speech as such, unless it's an obsessive compulsive thing. But there's a lot, as I say, a crossover diagnoses with people with autism and Tourette syndrome. Never heard of it, never seen it used in my schools that I worked at. And so it was a real surprise to hear that this was a thing when I met you and learning about it.
right.
Such a thing. So I am probably, of the three of us, the least experienced with facilitated communication and what it is and what it looks like. And forgive me, my dog is in the room with me. I have to take her to the vet today for blood work, and she can't eat, and she's not a happy girl. So that's why I
Poor
run off.
baby.
She was barking and whining, and so
Oh, I can't hear her. I can't hear her.
yeah. Oh, that's good, because she's walking around the room. I've got her closed in here, so if she starts barking again, if you see me muting and having to leave, that's probably what it is my dog
Okay.
is not very happy because she has not been fed today.
Poor thing.
No worries. No worries. It'll be interesting, this talk, because Susan, you and I have been dealing with FC for, I mean, in fact, I met Susan. I wanted to work on the FC Wikipedia page, and she's like, no, you can't do that.
Conflict of
Learn how to
interest.
edit Wikipedia first.
Yeah,
Learn how to do research and what reliable studies are.
yeah.
Yeah, and the
That's where we
conflict of
met.
interest is
Um,
big too.
Yeah, so and that was what, 2014 or something, I think. And
Gosh.
so she and I have known and talked about facilitated communication for quite a while. And Adrienne, you're fairly new to it. So the video that I picked for today to talk about is a sampler of rapid prompting methods. So it'll be really interesting to hear all of your thoughts about it. And if there's anybody in the comments that likes to would like to chime in,
Celestia Ward's
please.
here.
Yeah,
She
please
says she
do.
calls it puppeteering.
Yeah, puppeteering and like
When you think about it, that's
There's
kind of
al-
true.
it is true. There's always that tension between and actually FC started with the popularity of the deinstitutionalization and full inclusion movement. It sort of caught the wave of that. And so there's always this tension between providing people with an opportunity to communicate and in FC's case, the facilitators actually controlling that. And I think it comes from for most of the people, a well-intentioned place, but being well-intentioned doesn't necessarily mean that you're not doing harm. And so, yeah, I think there's a crossover.
Okay, so when we show this video, I think the people viewing this, I have not viewed this. I've only went through really quick to scan to see kind of what the video, what it's going to show. Like it's people being interviewed, and then it shows people being facilitated using RPM, and it's in chunks, and that's about all I know. It's 10 minutes
Right.
long, so this will only take us about 40 hours to get through.
Right.
Judging from how the work, how long it takes us to get through our introduction and the psychic videos we've done. And my channel is Psychics Explained, so I'm just going to tell you that several times today.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, and
But-
and Adrienne, if you've got something that you want to plug too, please do that. The video is it's an advertisement for a place, an organization called Unlocking Voices. And
got
it's
clever logo.
I hear from people in Europe that say, oh, facilitated communication isn't that popular here, but well, under the radar, there are some people that are promoting rapid prompting method in your country, RPM UK. And
So this is a British one.
yep.
Oh,
And-
good. I love British accents. That's
Okay.
really good.
So Sue Finesse is one of the people, and Alex Hopwood is the other person, the facilitators in this video. And they were both trained by Soma Mukherjee, who in the United States, who quote unquote invented rapid prompting method in the United States. She's got an interesting history, Soma does, where her son Tito is profoundly autistic, and she invented rapid prompting method because she had started with the traditional touch-based facilitated communication, which was brought over here to the United States by Douglas Bicklin of Syracuse University, and they're still ground zero for facilitated communication in the United States. And what happened was that she was holding on to Tito's wrist and using a letterboard, but her husband got suspicious. So he took Tito out to lunch without Soma. And then when they returned from lunch, they asked Soma about what happened at lunch, and none of the answers were correct. Well, none of the facilitated answers were correct. So he was like, whatever you're doing with our son is, you need to be careful about what you're promoting here. And she got mad. a couple days later, a week later and this is all documented in Portia Iverson's book, Strange Sun. She was the one that sponsored her organization, Cure Autism Now, sponsored Soma to come over to the United States. So it's a fairly, you know, she knew what was going on. Portia knew what was going on. So Soma, a couple days after this lunch test happened, all of a sudden the messages through facilitated communication was, Dad, you don't trust me, you know, you're not
hate that.
supportive.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so
There's the
Soma
harm.
ended up leaving. I don't know if they got a divorce. I think they stayed married, but she ended up taking Tito to another place and just focusing on just Tito. And that's pretty common, you know, if there's a family member that questions facilitated communication, or I should say it's known by like 20 different names. We have a list that keeps growing on our website, on the front page of our website, but it's purposeful that they've changed the name instead of fixing the technique, which is called typing. You know, that would be the fix. Having the student type by themselves is you know, what you would call a legitimate form of augmentative and alternative communication. But anyway, they changed the name. So she came up with rapid prompting method, and that's what we're going to see. So Sue Finesse was trained by Soma and has used RPM with her son since he was 7 years old, and he's in his 20s now, and she still has to hold the board for him. So much for fading. You know, she still holds the board for him, still cues him. There's verbal cues, there's, you know, physical
13 years later.
Yeah.
And he's still the same as he was at 7.
Yeah.
He's probably a little more docile. You know, he's probably like, okay, already, Mom, hold my hand, put the stupid board in front of me. Let's go.
Right. So it's a form of behavior modification. Whether it has anything to do with language learning and comprehension is another whole story. And then Alex Hopwood is somebody else we're going to see. And she has and I should also say Soma was not trained as a speech language clinician. She's not trained as an autism expert. She's not trained as a psychologist. She was a chemist, and probably was pretty good at, you know, very good in her field, but she's founded rapid prompting method based on no expert opinion, you know, no expert education. Alex Hopwood has a BA in education. She's not a speech language clinician. She's not, you know, like, again, which is, you know, that's good. It's a step in the right direction, but she is not a communication expert. She had a 4-day introduction with Soma at Halo is in Texas. That's where Soma works. And she had an RPM teacher internship from September to December. So 3 months, or what is it? September, October, no, 4-month training. And now she's an expert in rapid prompting method. And rapid prompting method, facilitated communication, supported typing, none of those have any kind of standardized certification or instruction like a speech language clinician would, or they call themselves interpreters now, which I don't know if somebody's supposed to be typing independently. I don't know what they're supposed to be interpreting, but there's no, like, the interpreters for the deaf go through lots of certification, and there's none of that with facilitated communication. So that's kind of an introduction to the two people that we're going to see.
And this video is 2 years old, so it's 2021.
Yeah, and Sue Finesse has a channel. If you want to learn more about what she's doing with her son, she puts up videos to explain rapid prompting method, and it's quite interesting to.
This video is for a channel called My QAC, and it has 35,000 views. And which is really interesting because the the channel, my QAC, has just under 400 subscribers.
Huh.
And to have 400 subscribers on your channel, but to have 35,000 views is quite unusual.
Yeah.
So, and the comments are turned off. So we
Mm.
don't know what other people would be saying about this video. There's a term in Twitter, I can't think of what it's called, whenever you see when you see somebody make a post and there's more comments than there are likes or sea lining, I can't think of the term, but there's a term for it. And I suspect that the same thing might be with this, that people are watching the video, can't comment, and that, but they're not finding any value in it, because if they did, they would subscribe.
Oh,
That's what I'm
interesting.
wondering.
Interesting.
Why
do-
wouldn't they
I do-
subscribe if they thought it was so valuable? And why would they turn off the comments if everybody was so positive about what they're seeing?
I do believe the national health system in Europe is openly opposes facilitated communication. I'm not sure if they've caught up with all the different names for it, but it's frowned upon. It doesn't stop it from, like being popular in private organizations and stuff. And some of the universities over there are supporting it, but yeah, I picked this one because I loved it. I loved the description. It was the penultimate video on rapid prompting method, and I was drawn to the penultimate. I wanted to know what that meant.
Yeah,
and
and
there-
remember,
there's
this is their video.
yes,
This is
yeah,
this is the video. These are the people that we're going to see that this group thinks is quality, good enough to promote their unlocking voices thing. So
Yeah.
this is not like we recorded a sting operation and we got in with a hidden camera to show these people. Now, I don't know what we're going to see. I suspect I know what I'm going to see because I've seen so many of these RPM videos. But so what we're seeing is what they consider the best.
right.
This good quality, great stuff. So I can imagine what the bad stuff is that they cut out. This is representing them.
I should say that people who promote rapid prompting method and spelling to communicate, those are the two of the most popular names right now, are those two, rapid prompting method and spelling to communicate. And they believe that with autism, their clients already have intact language and literacy skills. They don't have to be taught language and literacy skills. They're already there, intact. And all they have to do is support them emotionally and physically to tap into. That's what the unlocking voices thing is. So they'll talk a little bit about, and we can talk more about this when we get to that part, but they'll talk about speech and language and comprehension. But they're again, they presume competence. They presume that their clients, so right from the very beginning, are understanding everything that the facilitators are saying, and every response they make is because it's coming from the student and not the facilitator. So all the spelling and communications they don't even question it. They automatically presume. You don't even have to know how to spell, but somehow when you start rapid prompting method, but somehow you just kind of do. You've learned it from the environment, by being around books, by seeing posters or by looking at a cereal box. Somehow you've absorbed the ability to
And that's
to-
without being actually taught, correct? Like they actually haven't, like most kids, there's a process.
Yeah,
even
you go
to
through
teach
training
themselves.
how to
Like,
read.
you know, my oldest taught himself to read by the time he was 4, but there was a definite process that was visible for him to do that. So this is just more like a switch turns on and they got it. They can spell.
Yeah. There's a I want to do a plug for Katie Beals wrote this book called Students with Autism, and she breaks it down like autism. the research is showing that it's a social and a language problem primarily. And rapid prompting method, people are going to say that it's a motor difficulty. And the problem is that there's something called joint attention. And so people with autism are drawn towards environmental sounds and not human voices. So they miss a lot of opportunities to, like, if I was going to hold up my FCisNotScience mug and teach you that this is a mug, then you would look at my eyes and you would see that I'm looking at this, and you would know that I'm talking about this particular thing as a mug, right? And people with autism miss that opportunity. They don't read eyes very well. They look at mouths more than eyes. And so they miss a lot of the expression that comes through language learning when they're looking at your eyes. So they miss a lot of opportunities to know what to tune into. They may tune into the ceiling fan and not really tune into you talking to them. So they have to be taught how to do that. They have to be taught that the noises that you're making are things that they need to attend to. So for them to actually learn something in the environment, just by having this book or, whatever, a cereal box, they would have to know that those squiggles on the cereal box, those designs actually mean something. Those aren't just squiggles, those are letters. Or which ones are the cereal and which one are the letters? You have to be taught all those things. And they miss, there is something called hyperlexia where in autism, there's quite a few that I forgot what the percentage was, 6 to 21%, I think she said, that can actually read words. They tune into words but they don't know what they mean. There's no comprehension. They can read them. And we're finding that some of the people who are facilitated can actually read some words, but there's a question about whether they have the ability to comprehend what they're saying, or if they have the phonetic, like the phonetic awareness, or if they can decode reading and all that kind of stuff. So without getting too much into it, so there's a big problem with proponents often fall back on, oh, there was a lot of books in his environment, or he learned politics off the radio, or off the television set. Well, that's not how people learn how to read. There's just no evidence for that. So there's this magical way of people of explaining away these unexpected literacy.
A lot of them think their child is like the master of the, superior intelligence.
Right. So some of the individuals have been tested in a standardized way and have fairly low IQ scores, but when they're facilitated and take the same tests, their scores are like 135, 160, in the genius range. When you have a I'm trying to think of the name of the book. Virginia Breen and Elizabeth Bonker supposedly wrote a book, and in her case, the IQ score was something around in the 50s, I think. She was 6, and there was a facilitator that was allowed to use rapid prompting method with her while she took the IQ test, and she scored 165 on it. So you've got an adult taking an IQ test for a 6-year-old, and what are the scores are going to be, and that's quite, yep. I mean, there's a movie called Autism is a World. The same thing happened in that. The student was allowed to have somebody hold their hand while they took an IQ test. You have to wonder about the ethics of the people giving those tests.
Situation.
Yeah.
And there is some history of people who are or have limited exposure to literacy and language when they're young, and then they get some intense interventions and their IQ scores raise, but they don't raise a huge amount. You know, you might go from moderately delayed to low average, you know, but you don't go from severely delayed to genius level. It's just not the way IQ scores are set up. You know, it's sort of, they're built towards moving towards the mean, and it would be very unusual for somebody to go from severely delayed to a genius level, but that's happening with rapid prompting method.
So we're going to take notes on this as we go, and then we're going to stop after the introductions, right?
Yep. So the first little bit here, how we doing on time? I know there's a little bit of a time crunch, but there's a few minute introduction with the two people. Let's stop after that, and then there's little bits, little vignettes, and they're very short, and there's maybe 5 people who are being facilitated, so we can stop after each one.
Okay.
and see
So
how
I'll
you...
stop after the introduction. So here goes the beginning. Keep in mind, I have not listened to this.
Hello everybody, my name's Sue Finesse.
And I'm Alex Hopwood.
And we're both directors of a UK not-for-profit community interest company called Unlocking Voices using RPM. More about that in a minute. I'm a parent. My son is, Christopher, is 21 years old. He has autism and he's non-verbal, would be regarded as low functioning, needs lots of help with his daily care, etc., etc. But the rapid prompting method has been absolutely life-changing for us, because it's shown us, and he's been able to show us, that he's highly intelligent, but just unable to show that intelligence in a neurotypical way. Alex worked with Chris many years ago, and that's what introduced you to RPM.
Yeah, so now I'm a full-time RPM teacher, and basically we're just seeing that it is life-changing, not just for the students but for their families too, because they're suddenly having all of these insights into this person that they thought, you know, maybe just like the Teletubbies, or maybe just liked whatever interest that they had, but actually there's a lot more to that person. Now, you probably haven't heard about RPM before. It isn't that well known in the UK, but there are certainly a growing number of families trying it now, and we would love for more families to be able to access it.
Yeah, that's really the mission of Unlocking Voices, the company. The whole purpose of it is to spread the word a bit more, to provide resources, to help families to learn this approach so that you can have a go with your child, you know, and we provide lots of free resources as well. So, you know, we're really committed to helping you.
So we'll share some quick videos now, just so you get more of a sense of what RPM's about. But if you'd like to see clips in more detail, please come and see us at the event. We'd love to talk to you.
Okay. So what do you think?
I forgot it was on mute.
I hadn't actually seen that part. For some reason, the link that you sent started
Oh yeah,
with rapid prompting. So
Oh,
this is the first time seeing the introduction of who these
oh, nice.
are. And my first thought was, okay, they're this company that's promoting this. How much does it cost? And is it covered? And if it's,
Good point. Is it covered by insurance? Because doesn't Britain have
I don't know if it would be covered. And if it's, even if it's covered, oh no. If it's not covered, oh no, because it's going to hurt people, right? Because they're spending money, probably a lot of money, I would guess.
it's a commitment, I'm sure. You don't, well, I guess it's supposed to learn quickly.
I don't, there's a study, let me see if I can find it. There is a study that tells how much rapid prompting method costs. Let me see if I can.
I'm interested in the facilitators. Obviously, they're starting a company, so they have to be positive and like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to get this introduced to more people so more people can buy our services. This
Spread
is
the
really
word.
amazing. I'm curious about those people. I guess this isn't a good judge of it because it's obvious these people are biased,
Mhm.
but that they think they're really helping.
What they do.
I think most facilitators at the lower levels who are just starting out or who've been doing it for a little bit think that they're helping somehow.
And there's probably a lot of confirmation bias that's happening with
Yeah, well, once you start buying into
Getting
it, I think you don't have a lot of, you're gonna continue buying into it. So what does that study say?
I just put a link in the I actually did a blog post. Hang on.
I'll put it to the Facebook page at least. You can put it in.
Yeah, there's a study. It's very expensive. Well, I don't know what I'm not going to take time to look it up, but it's you can see it through that study, or there's also, if you go to our blog, there's also a review on facilitatedcommunication.org. It's very expensive, and what happens is you have to, as a facilitator, you have to get trained as a facilitator, and then you have to have these consultations with the whatever it's like a pyramid scheme in some ways, where there's a master trainer that oversees all the people who are trained. So you have to have periodic consultations with those people in order to keep your certification. And this is on top of regular special education costs. And then there's also camps and like the parents can sign up for consultations as well. Very expensive. It's not something that's
So you're saying that the parents have to go through this training and pay for this training? Or
if they want to be trained facilitators, they have to.
And they
Yeah.
want to be trained facilitators, so they want to communicate with their child.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because the most facilitators, is this true or not? Is this a true statement or a fake statement? Most facilitators that you see are parents with their child.
Many are. Yep.
Because you want to communicate with your kid. They're in
Yep.
and by doing this facilitated communication or RPM or whatever, you're buying into a lifestyle that is going to completely erase what might actually help out their child,
Right.
with other kinds of special education and special help. That all has to be thrown out. So anything that would be traditionally science-based help for your child is gone. It'd be like somebody going to a cancer quack and signing up for a cancer quack for this fake thing. But the terms of getting this cancer quack's help is that you no longer can have Western, scientifically proven medicine. No
Right.
chemo, no radiation, no surgery. That's all out. You have to buy full in on ours. I mean, obviously the child isn't going to die from neglect in the way a cancer patient would, but it's the same idea that it's this or it's that, but you can't have both, and you're going to be ready for this
Yep.
quackery stuff. Probably, I don't think the insurance covers this. I don't.
Well, what happens is that the facilitators don't call it facilitated communication. They call it typing to communicate or something that fits into an IEP. So they get it. That's another way they change the name so that they can actually get funded. It's not legal to do that, but that's what they do. A lot of the parents that are drawn to facilitated communication in all of its variant forms is that they've tried evidence-based measures and they're not satisfied with the results. It's not that they aren't working, but applied behavior analysis or some of the other methods that are being used these people guarantee 100% success rate, and the other forms of communication can't, they can't and don't. Realistically, not everybody is going to respond. Not everybody has the ability to, I know this is really unpopular with the pro FC people, but not everybody has the ability to communicate in a highly functional way. They can communicate.
They are
Communication
communicating.
and language are
Leave me
two different
alone.
things. What these people want is a conversation, a high level conversation with their child.
Mhm.
That just may not happen with some people.
Possibly independent living, you know, going to college, having peers, and this is just really sad because the parents themselves have this expectation. This is where it gets into the mediumship world as well. You know, you're willing to look at only this little path you have. Is the expectation is your child is going to do these things, great things in life, and let's not look at the stuff on the side. Let's not look at the fact that the child isn't even looking at the board, or in the case of the psychic world that they're dead. People are going, Susan,
Well,
you're
and
way out the board here.
also
It did
heartbreaking
sound
to
pretty strange.
parents.
Hmm?
It's heartbreaking to parents. to
Yeah, you have
children
expectations for your
that
child that
can't
will never be,
communicate. Yeah.
they're
And I
not
mean,
there.
I have kids with Tourette syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, the whole works. And when you're struggling just day to day to stay sane because of the extreme behaviors that come out from your children, I think parents become desperate,
Mhm.
find that help. And my kids were much more functioning than these kids that we're seeing and going to see in this video. So I can imagine that their distress would even be amplified compared to what I went through with my own children. And it's I think it's devastating. And it reminds me a lot of sort of the homeopathic world or the naturopathic world. You get a diagnosis of cancer and the doctors say to you, this is all I can do for you. And so they go to the naturopath. Oh, I've cured cancer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's not good enough for me, so I'm going to go get this.
That when you said that 100, they offer 100%
Yep.
success rate. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
that's
I've got an article that somebody asked Soma if you know what her success rate is, and she said she's never failed.
I mean, even Soma's son, do we even know what's going on with him now? This master trainer, this person who invented this whole thing, is her son independent? Is Tito living an independent life? Is he traveling, voting, getting married, opening bank accounts? Is he like is he on his own? Is he out there functioning as this success story of amazement? Where is the son now? Do we have any idea of what's going on with this guy?
He's still with Soma. He communicates with her sitting on the stage. Now her
So he's not independent.
not
She's
as
still
far as I'm
having to
concerned.
hold his hand or the letterboard in front of him.
He can type with the letterboards or computer screen, or you know, sitting in front of him, but she sits beside him. And
She's still
the thing
there,
is
yeah.
that she's been training Tito for many years,
Mhm.
and her visual cues are very slight, so she can move her head or she can move her hand slightly, and he knows that he needs to move his hand over to the other side of
Right.
the screen or whatever. They're so in tuned. I mean, he's been the one thing that Portia Iverson said in her book was that Soma only paid attention to Tito, you know, and this is her opinion, it's from the book, so I you know, would take it for what that's worth, but she only paid attention to him when she was training him to do rapid prompting method. She left him like, so if you want, when you're 6 and you want attention from your mom, you know, you're gonna sit and do whatever she wants you to do. But
we
the
don't
cues
think he's
become very
living
subtle.
independently or anything that would be.
Well, they define independence as not having the facilitator touch the board, but that doesn't
oh.
mean
having
there aren't
conversations.
visual and
If
auditory
he's
cues that
right, articulating great thought and knows about politics. And if these people are at a point in their life where the facilitator has deemed, all right, you could have a full conversation with them. They could be an author, a poet, they can go to college, they can have relationships, they know all about politics. We saw one on one of the channels that were talking about gun rights. They were asking this kid about gun rights, and he was articulating, well, the facilitator is articulating what the facilitator wanted, coming and then saying it came out of the kid's mouth or hand. And so these are real, in their view, they're saying these are real functioning
Communication.
adults. They
Yep.
full range of conversations. You can talk to
Yep.
them about mining in South Africa. You can talk to them about politics in the Ukraine. You could talk to them about what's going on in other parts of the world. They know, the geography. They know all this stuff. So why are they still saying I still have to stand right next to him to type, and I can't just leave him with the keyboard and go,
Emotional, because they need emotional support.
even whenever there's no camera watching, they still need emotional support.
Or communicate with another person, like
Yeah.
the father or
Can't you
a
just-
beloved aunt or
Yeah, can't you just
friend.
say, I'm gonna
Oh.
go do the dishes. Tito, don't forget to write to your dad. And then Tito sits down at the keyboard and he writes to his dad, hey dad, what's up? And then he hits send on this because he obviously knows how to use a keyboard now. And then mom comes in, did you write to your dad?
Because if you don't believe in it, then it doesn't work.
Well, I just noticed that Celestia has a thought that was actually percolating in my brain. And of course, she says it much better than I could. Says the media has a long history of only showing autism as a hidden genius condition. How much do you think that has played into
Oh,
this?
that's really good,
parents'
Celestia.
A lot, because the media picks up on the feel-good stories.
Mhm.
There was just one in December that, like Miracle, and they use Miracle in the title. All you have to do is hold up a letterboard and miraculously
They know how to read.
this person
Okay.
can
Stop.
communicate. And so the media has been horrible. They will pick up if there's a false allegations of abuse case. And there was also someone who actually murdered her child based on
Jordan.
facilitated communication messages. And there was a Rutgers university professor who raped her client.
Mhm.
And
Stubblefield.
these were court cases, and
Yeah,
they'll cover that for the length of the trial, and then but they don't extend it to like, does FC work or does it not work? They every single there's a person in Florida, a 14-year-old that wants to go to Harvard University to study internal medicine based on she's being facilitated. Like, how is that going to work? Last year there was a valedictorian at Rollins College that graduated using rapid prompting method, and she was a she got her degree. She's a valedictorian. There's somebody at Vanderbilt University right now with a scholarship, a doctoral scholarship to study neuroscience, and he's being facilitated.
Yeah. And nobody will call out the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
Because to do so, once they get up to college level, if your professors are in college are going, wait a minute, this is a bunch of crap.
Mm.
This student doesn't know crap. The facilitator's doing all the work. They can't do that, because to do that, then it would put all of their peers, all the people who've promoted them from whatever level to college, all of them they would have to call into say everything. You guys, you pass this person? How do you pass this person? This isn't right. And so
I
to
did
do
look
that,
at-
they keep promoting them, and they have to keep quiet because also they don't want the autism community to come after them.
Right. Well, that's really what keeps it. I hear
be
from people
programmed.
behind the
Problem.
scenes all the time that say, well, I can't speak out because I'm going to get, my administration is going to come down on me. If the school system's going to get sued,
Yeah.
there's some things in place, like
Just
political
pass them.
things
Just-
in
just
place.
Close your eyes, pass them to the next teacher.
Yeah.
Oh, he did well. You did great. Move on.
Yeah.
Move on.
I have an article that the student graduated also valedictorian of her college, where she sat in the back of the room doing jigsaw puzzles while the facilitator took notes. And this was a comment from the mom, which reveals really what happened, was that she said the student was so smart that she didn't even have to look at the facilitator's notes, and that she was listening, and she was so smart that she could just be facilitated during the tests, and she knew all of the answers. She got a 4.0 at that college. And and yeah, I don't know. It sort of boggles my mind why this is even still around, but that's just me.
It's a feel-good story. And just like Celestia says, it's a hidden genius.
Yeah.
And that sells papers, it gets clicks on articles. Miracle, miracle, miracle.
Well, and autism is really mysterious. I mean, there's still, like, as much money as has gone into researching, what are the causes, or if there are ways to mitigate the effects of autism. It's still a big mystery. So it's just, and I think it goes back to what Adrienne was saying about coping strategies. I was going to say that a lot of the books that I've read that are pro FC written books, the parents will talk about, like, how overwhelming it is to do all the therapies, the scheduling for all that, the cost of all that. And then you have facilitated communication. It's compared to the cost of all those other services, like the time and the financial cost, all of a sudden the parents can take control of the person's literally take control of the person's communication. But you can see why that would be appealing, because with FC, all you need is a laminated letterboard, and you can just have at it. With rapid prompting method and spelling to communicate, you just need a stencil letterboard and a little bit of, like they say that training is really complicated, but anyway, so all of a sudden they can get rid of all those specialists. In fact, they say they're against people who have their mindset in traditional autism research and stuff, because they're not thinking out of the box, so they reject a lot of the people the experts that may actually be able to help their child. And then they start forming these groups, like the one that these people want to do. And they lock out all of the other people. So it becomes a very closed community. And
well, you ready to see it? I think I'm dying to see this. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Taking notes?
Yep.
I'll stop it after the first segment. So this is like a minute or so.
It shows him when he's little, and then when he's a little bit older. So there's actually 2 sections. His name's Narain.
So I should wait until the second.
It's very quick, but
over.
it's yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. I won't stop it until then. So here goes. Oh, what are we going to see?
In more detail, please come and see us at the event. We'd love to talk to you.
But he thought, oh gosh, I'm going to have to tell the truth. So he decided to write a book. The book was published. But then very quickly everybody hated it. And they said, no, nobody's allowed to read this book. Yes. Nobody's allowed to read it. So what did he write? He wrote a book. He wrote a play. Which one? He wrote a book.
Plays together now. So I'm feeling awesome. Quickly. A, good, come on. B, after B, good, and the AB was good there. O, brilliant, come on. U, and then about.
Shall we spell words?
We said second line has 2 words which are adjectives. Now spell words.
Is this the same guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Which one? You're close. W, where? O, R, D, and S. Word.
Embarrassing, wasn't it? Oh no, it's lovely.
Okay.
People should be
That's
recognized.
it. That's the first one.
Oh, I am not going to do well. That was, oh my gosh. They lock these kids in a little corner. They're pushing them in a corner. They're in a corner and the kid's still in a corner. They got the desk in front of him as an adult and he's in a corner. And then the facilitator's right there on the side. So there's like this much opening for him to get past her if he needs to get away from her. And then when he's,
And pick which one. Well, I wonder, she could have just
she
not
put the
said anything.
bigger one right in front of him. And she put the little tiny one. I barely even knew what the heck she was talking about. Was it a book or was it a play? Here's the pencil. Point
And
to
does
the
it
right
matter
way.
what's written on there? I mean,
He didn't even look.
No.
He didn't even know. And then he's not even looking at this letterboard. Gosh,
And
this
as
makes me
an
so
adult-
bad. This
as
poor
an-
kid.
yeah, as an adult, I don't know if you noticed, or a teenager, I don't know how old he is in that last clip. I actually rewound it a couple times when I watched this earlier, just to see, because I was confused. I was like, where are they getting word from? Because he actually spelled out VWNORDWRS. But apparently that spells
And
word.
he's pointing all over the hecky places.
He
There's
did actually.
no way. There is no way that somebody who is not already a believer in FC can look at that and say, yeah, this works. No way. That kid has been abused by the system all these years, and he's not going to be getting the help that he probably could get. Yeah, he probably will never go to college or any of that stuff, but he would get his own help. Just accept him as he is. He is that child, and to try to make him into this literary scholar or whatever it is they're trying to do is disingenuous, and it's cruel, it's manipulative, it's wrong. Oh my gosh. Okay, here I'm gonna mute myself because it just pissed me off.
Well, and I've heard too, people on the autistic spectrum saying that I don't like the fact that you're referring to me as there's something wrong. I'm a person. And I feel that way about my kids too. Yes, they have Tourette syndrome. Yes, they have all these other things, but they're still people. They just, so I do find that difficult. Like what Susan was saying, let them be themselves, right? Yeah, do what you can to help them. But yeah, this is a big attempt at a fix that didn't work very well. And they guided, even with the words, right? You're close. They used those words in the last one when he hit the V and the W, or the V beside the, you're close. So he just moves. So there's prompting even at that level with the voice.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing with the letterboards is that the facilitator, I mean, you were good to pick out all those letters that he, the extra ones that he hit. That happens a lot with facilitators, is that they think that the person, if like, what is accurate when you're using letterboards like that? Is it when the person actually touches the letter, or is it like close to it? Or like sometimes we find that they're not even touching anywhere near the letter that the facilitator is calling out. And with plastic letterboards, especially when it's rapid, that happens a lot. There's no way really to know where the person is touching quickly.
Do they say that's because with autism they have difficulty with motor coordination, and they say that that's why it happens? Do they use that as a
They point at just random things on the board?
No, the facilitators will say that's accurate. The facilitators don't call that out. I mean,
And the
in that
facilitator
facilitator,
decides.
in that facilitator's mind, that person typed out word. And so it's, and that's
How can you
across,
believe that?
that's a crossover with with the psychics, is that they believe what they believe
Believe the
what they
hits.
think are the hits,
Yeah.
and they disregard what's not the hits. So yeah, I mean, the other thing is, when he was working with the stencil letterboard, is two things about that, actually. One is he wasn't looking at the stencil.
No.
He was just poking the stencil
Yeah, he
in,
wasn't looking at all.
yeah, and the facilitator, there's something called the ideomotor response, where you can't help if you hold up a piece of paper. I always say, use an example of put a marble on a plate and try to hold that marble still. And you'll see that's the ideomotor response. Your body just moves, you know, gravity and stuff. And so the board is going to move. And the other thing that happens with the ideomotor response is that you naturally, if you think you know the answer, you naturally are going to move the board to make that selection a little bit easier. So if you think the next letter is an A, you're not, without even really thinking about it, you're naturally going to pull that board over a little bit so the person can touch the A. It happens very quickly. And you don't even, it doesn't even register. Like, facilitators legitimately don't always know how much they're cueing the person, but they're also trained not to look. So this person, I believe the facilitator, what's her name, Alex, really believes that she wasn't moving that kid's hand. And the other thing that happens is that the facilitators will look at the board and they don't notice that the child is looking in the other direction. And then what I noticed in a video the other day was that when the facilitator moves, the child will look at the facilitator. And so that confirms for the facilitator that the kid was looking. Like, so in that moment, it looks like the kid is actually looking and paying attention, when all the rest in the middle, they were looking like this.
But the video, this is their video. How do you not rewind that video and say, let's put out a video showing how great this is? Oh, hey, look, this video, let's use this. He's not looking at the board. How can they not see that? How can they not?
They're looking at themselves to make sure that they've behaved.
But you can see he's not looking at the board. I can't get past this. This
Or
is
they
their
don't want
video.
to. I mean, that's
They decide. This is not a live feed. This is something that was a videotape, and they said, oh, let's show some video. Okay,
Right.
How about this video? This is a good one.
This is
I look
this is
good.
an advertisement for rapid prompting method for
He's
unlocking
not
voices.
looking at the board. How do you even slightly get past that? You can't. You cannot even, unless you're going to say it's psychic. He's using psychic powers to control it, because you cannot. You can't hold your hand and point at a plastic board that's moving in the air in front of you and not look at it.
Well, they will say
no. Big X. No, this is just silly.
so. It's not just me. I mean, people just blame me for being, you know, like against facilitated communication because I had a bad experience with it. So
Silly.
not just me.
You were going to say something.
Okay, well, let's see what the next one's going to look like.
Well, I want to say, Adrienne said peripheral vision. Now they will say that that the kids are using peripheral vision. Now there's two problems with that. One is when you're looking like this and the board is over here, it's beyond your peripheral vision. The other thing is like structurally and mechanically, your peripheral vision is not meant to pick up small letters. That's what your central vision is for. Your peripheral vision picks up large movements and shadows. And so there's that like biologically, that argument does not work. Scientifically, that argument does not work, but that's what they believe, is that like the kid can have his head turned away around the other direction and somehow peripherally they're seeing.
I just don't get it. I've been following this for years. I've seen tons and tons, hours of videos of facilitated communication. You put somebody in this chair right now who's never ever seen one of these facilitated videos. You pull person off the street, set them here and say, watch this, tell me what you think. They're going to go, he's not even looking at the board. What the heck? That's it. Why would a parent pass that moment? I'm just,
Well, what happens in
this
some
other
of the,
explanation is needed, that he
There is,
learned
well-
off a cereal board, or a cereal box of cereal, how to read. We learned politics on the radio. None of that is needed. The whole thing boils down to, is he even looking at the board as he's moving his hand there? And does the facilitator say letters that he supposedly said? If he's not even looking, you could just go home. Like, Mr. Randy, sorry, Mr. Randy, you got to go home. I would be like, if I was Mr. Randy, I'd say, they're not looking at the board. End of story. I'm booking my flight home. Let me know when they're looking at the board, when they're pointing to something. This isn't even typing. Like, you can type without looking, but you have to rest your hand on something. You can't just type in the air, like just like this and type.
like one finger.
You can't do that. Maybe some magician somewhere has figured out how to do it, but you
Yeah.
can't do that. And you cannot hold a plastic board in the air with somebody holding a pencil, and they're not, unless there's some trick device over off to the side that's got some mirror that the kid is actually looking at, that's like, they can see that they've trained themselves. No, this is done. This is stupid.
All right, next one. This is Posey. Posey's next.
Great.
My
In a corner.
OPINIO. My opinion, I is TH.
And I got my long hair. And your hair is so long. It's probably longer than mine.
It's like a bun.
It is a bun. It's because it hasn't been brushed. So I've just put it back.
Yes. It's really good.
I like your HYIDO and T.
Okay.
person.
That was
All
was
right,
Posey.
so she's in a corner again, yet they've wedged him into a corner, so I can't even think of the word, I'm so angry. Their
That's typical.
form,
Yeah.
Hmm?
Is that typical where they put them in a corner?
Yeah. They restrain them.
they're restrained. The child has been conditioned to do that, to be in that corner and be okay with it. She can communicate. She's talking about that woman's hair. She had no problem communicating.
That was my note too. This person can communicate. What is this about? I don't understand.
Well, they would say that she got to that point because of the earlier conditioning, I bet.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, I'm not sure about this particular person, but they changed it a few years ago to include. It used to be just nonverbal people or non-speaking individuals, but now they've expanded their offerings to include people who can speak. And what they say is that the typing or the spelling is more reliable than their spoken language. So they blame almost all spoken language as echolalia and not reliable. And that's just not true. There are some people who have echolalia, and some people, there's a combination of spoken or meaningful language and echolalia. And there's some argument that echolalia sometimes is meaningful as well. It's not just like repeating back something.
Can you say
that
what
they-
echolalia is? Because I know what
Echolalia
it
is like when
You
when
repeat
a
back.
person will repeat something back. It might be a piece from a television show that they've watched, or a book that they've read, or just a phrase, a sentence or a phrase.
like nanu, or
Yeah,
Sounds- it
in
can
a
be
video,
sound.
yeah, in a video that actually, Adrienne, you probably can explain echolalia better than I am at the moment,
You did a
but
great job. So like just repeating what I said. And it may be a full sentence. It may be my full sentence, or it could just be the last bit, or they can also change it a little bit. So I had a teacher tell me once, I had a student that would put, I was fill in the blank. So he would say, well, we're going to talk about the War of 1812. I was in the War of 1812.
Oh, interesting.
Ludicrous, but so it can change a little bit. Echolalia, it can change, but essentially they're taking either the full sentence, a bit of a sentence or something, and repeating it back. And they might repeat it over and over and over again.
Could it be a phrase that's something that they always say?
Mhm.
Like
That could be totally
nanner,
meaningless.
nanner, like I said, or abracadabra. Abracadabra, just that's isn't that from Tourette syndrome? Isn't that what we see people who have?
As I say, there's that crossover between
Can.
autism
Yeah.
and Tourette syndrome. They have these commonalities, and that's one of them is echolalia, which is, so not all people with Tourette syndrome and not all people with autism will have echolalia, but it is a fairly common feature. And so and just repeats what was last said, like abracadabra. You said that, so now they're going to say abracadabra, and then they may say it for the rest of the day or not.
I did a video critique of somebody that had echolalia, and she would use it. She was in a spelling session with Soma, and she would use it like when she was in distress. So she said something like Houdini is a magic trick, or Houdini's death was a
We
magic
watched
trick,
that
but
one. I saw that.
really she was like distressed because she didn't know what letter she was, or that she was being ignored by Soma.
And that's another common feature between Tourette syndrome and autism. When they're distressed, these symptoms do come out more, for sure.
So it can be like a self-soothing things. She also in this video she would say, how about I get up? And so it was echolalic in a way, but it was also meaningful to the situation. Like she kept, how about I get up?
So that's
Or
not
bye-bye,
echolalia.
or that kind of thing. And
right.
so it can be, there are times when echolalic speech can be meaningful or serve some sort of purpose. The other thing, go ahead, sorry.
It's hard to parse them apart.
Yeah.
Meaningful or
I don't
not.
understand why would somebody saying I need to get up, or how about I get up? How is that echolalia and not just speech?
They could have just heard it 2 minutes before, 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before, and said it multiple times during the day. After
Okay, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It just sounded to me, I know what video she's talking about, and she says, how about I get up? She was definitely distressed, and she got up, and they forced her back into that corner. So she got, and it had been a long time. She wanted to get up. She's done with this. Didn't she say other things like, I'm done, or we're talking about a totally different difference, but
so she in that case she used different phrases to mean like she was done, she wanted, and it didn't necessarily mean it, like that was one that was actually pragmatic, but there were other times that other phrases that she used that meant the same thing, but it was, it wasn't as direct as that. The other thing I wanted to point out that reminded me in these videos that we're watching is watch how much work the facilitator does and how much time the facilitator is involved with either taking notes or ripping paper up, and the kids are just like sitting there waiting for the facilitator to do something, anything really, I think that's a lot of lost instructional time.
And the child, I find interesting is they're later in the second part, when the child is more complacent, has been taught to be complacent, is sitting there, and the facilitator is like cueing, okay, you select a letter, and this last one she would like shake the board saying you've chosen the letter, and she made the speech. So the letter was I, S, is, then the next letter is T. And and it's I'm thinking, how do you know that to stop after I is that's a full word? Why didn't she just wait until the whole?
Maybe it was just a full.
Yeah, because it could be some entirely different word,
Yeah,
even misspelled.
Yeah.
But when you're doing code, you know, whenever you're doing code and you're like, you're taking down the code and it's like Morse code coming through, you don't immediately start going, oh, this is what he's saying. You wait until all the letters are in, and then you like divide it up and go, okay, this is the phrase.
And
This
it's so
is how it is.
rapid. It's hard to follow.
Unless they say space. No,
Yeah.
it's the letters are the letters.
Mhm.
And they
And did
come
you notice
in.
the very first woman, how much she moved her hand? The girl was pretty, she was quiet. She actually was looking at the board, but she was basically
Are the second part of her
very, very first part when she was quite young.
oh, let me look
Whoever's
at that.
facilitating
Wait a
moved
second.
her hand quite a bit. I learned that from Janyce from one of her talks.
So who's moving her hand? The
The
mom?
facilitator.
The facilitator.
Okay, I'm gonna
A
show
lot of
that part
times
again.
the person being facilitated has it's often to do with where the facilitator holds the letterboard, but they have a limited range of motion. And so they kind of point to a relatively similar section of the board, and the facilitator is the one that's moving the letterboard around.
Okay, I'm gonna show that a little bit again. Because
Wasn't it the same person? I think it was a different person, wasn't it? Is it two people?
And
Okay, this one here.
I
Oh, the mom.
Yeah, is it the mom?
O
Yeah.
look at the mom's hand is,
I N
Yeah.
I O.
well, she's
My
looking at the board.
opinion
Yeah, she is looking at the board.
is T A, and I got
So the first time she's not saying
Probably longer than mine.
spelling it, but this part right here, she starts spelling and she's like telling her what she spelled.
Yeah.
She's like saying, let me get to the part.
N T.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Getting into this little
yeah, I mean,
adorable little boy that we're going to show next. Oh my gosh, in the corner again. Is it because, are they in the corner because of this video that we're watching? This is where they film. The way they have the camera set up in the corner. Because I know the answer already, because I've seen a ton of FC videos and they're always in some sort of barrier to them getting up.
Yeah, with rapid prompting
Just-
method and spelling to communicate, you see much more trapped in the corner kind of stuff.
Trapped in a
So-
corner.
So do you believe this person says my voice is making me look like I don't understand? That was the message that she
Well, she was at
supposedly
least
typed
looking
out.
at it.
Not my voice is Istanbul.
Um,
Sorry.
This is why
so we
have
don't
Adrienne
we
here.
don't know if she has letter sound recognition. We don't even know if she knows, like, those are the questions I ask, and that's what I'd want to know. It's, you can't necessarily tell this from a video, but you know, do they have letter sound recognition? Do they understand that letters make up words? Do they understand that words make up sentences? Can they use sentences?
That should be testable, correct?
That's all testable.
Mhm.
And the thing is, a lot of facilitators will say that a testing situation is not naturalistic, and it's puts too much stress on the individual being tested.
Sounds
But
like psychics.
yes,
It can't,
Yeah,
it only
it does
works
sound like
if you don't
psychic.
test it.
yeah.
And it only
and the-
works if you believe.
Yeah, the thing is, all they need to know, all they have to do is blind the facilitator from what's being asked. And the facilitator and the client can facilitate exactly the same way as they always do. But you ask questions that the facilitator doesn't have access to. But that gets into a situation where the facilitator will, there's actually documentation of one facilitator that they blinded, and she's like, well, I can't help my student if I don't know what the answers are, you know. And so what will be reported to, and after that was a actually false allegation of abuse case, and she continued to use facilitated communication after she was tested. But anyway, I forgot, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm going to jump in because it makes me so mad. This girl in the red, whatever her name was again, I've forgotten already.
Posey.
Posey, thank you.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that she understands that holding the pencil, pointing it at a device means written communication. There's no evidence of that at all.
Right.
As far as we know, this is just something she's been conditioned to do. Oh, I need to go sit in this chair, hold this thing and point it over there. And the person who I want to connect with makes noises and random letters or whatever it is they're saying. And then I get up and I can go watch TV, or I can go do the things I want to do, play with a puppy, eat something. There's no reason to assume that action means she's communicating.
Right.
Because there's no evidence she knows written communications, that is, oh my gosh, people.
Yeah.
I'm going to be eating all my milk duds that I brought out for this.
Stressful, isn't it?
Because
It's stressful.
Stressful.
Yeah.
These are kids, right?
Their whole life is lost to just this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know what I was going to say.
I'm eating milk dud now.
If you question it, like if the facilitator starts getting stressed out about being in a testing situation, they start typing, the facilitated messages start coming out like, I don't like how this tester is treating me.
She's looking at me.
I'm too stressed out to continue doing this. I'm fearful. And so, I mean, these are documented testing things that have resulted from trying to do a double-blind testing. When the facilitator's anxiety goes up, the messages that come out through facilitated communication start
This isn't working.
coming out like, yeah.
Yeah, she's got the evil eye on me.
I do want to say that when I went through double-blind testing, the evaluator was Howard Shane from Boston Children's Hospital, and he gave, I didn't know this, but he gave my student a word to use to signal to him when she wanted to be done. So she had control whether she stayed or not. She wasn't locked in a corner like these people are. She could leave at any time.
Wasn't it taking a book off a shelf or something?
He gave her, I think I asked him about that. He remembers it, that he gave her a sign, sign to
if you
be
need to
done, or
leave this
like a
test,
hand.
if you're uncomfortable, do this.
An
you'll be over
ASL hand sign to be done. Something I remembered it, that she just had to get up and take a book off the shelf, but I don't think that's true. I think when I asked him, he said he generally in that situation, he gives them either a hand signal or a word that they would understand that means, I don't want to do this anymore. But yeah.
He gives that to them out of your hearing.
Yes, yes. And so they have complete control in the testing situation about whether they want to stay or not, which is not true of these situations that we're seeing on this video.
They don't have that option.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Everybody watching? Are you ready?
This
for
is Sam.
He looked so adorable. I'm just afraid to watch this one. He looks so
I know.
cute.
They're so little.
All the kids are quite lovely.
Yeah.
My goodness. But this one, I raised boys. So look at him. He's smiling.
I just want to hug him.
In a corner again.
Now you do it. Go on. That's it.
Good. Keep going. Keep going. Oh no. B. Yes. Oh no. Back to the B. I. Good boy. T. S. Rabbits. A. N. D. And what was it? Did you remember? P. That you're right. A. R. Let's go double R. Good boy. Rabbits and parrots. So my goodness, they can see behind themselves without even moving their head.
My goodness.
She decided when that was over.
This is a different person. Yeah.
We're done. Oh, good. You got the right answer. We're done. Well, what
She was saying telling him to spell certain things, though, right? That was what that one was. It wasn't them coming back with their own thoughts. It was.
I think she was telling a story, and what they do is they ask him a question like a lesson. So, what did was it a rabbit or a parrot in the story that I just read to you? Oh, it was a rabbit. How accurate you are. So it's
Gotcha.
Not like they're giving their opinion on something, but they're she thinks she's testing him
Did you notice the hand signals in that one?
in the second part.
Oh,
In the second one?
you know what? I was looking for, first of all, not in a corner in the second one. So I thought, oh, yay, that's better.
Yeah.
He was focusing on the board.
Yeah, to
Okay.
some extent, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he'd certainly, but he wouldn't point to it unless he was looking at it. And so I didn't catch that, Janyce.
No,
So
I'm gonna look at it again.
listen to her vocal inflections. She uses a lot of vocal inflections up and down to, you know, yeah, S or whatever, you know, like, and then, yep. And then she holds her hand in his peripheral vision. This really is peripheral vision. And she's moving her finger, like point
I
up,
didn't catch that.
you know, get the letter up or whatever, you know, and she's also moving the board in the air. So watch this.
The board for sure.
Yeah.
It's not huge.
Put the board on the ground. Why is the board in the freaking air? Why? Nobody
then
ever tells you an answer to that. Why do we have to hold it in the air?
Because if it's on the ground, Windows is VWNORDWRS. That's why.
Right.
Okay, so I'm
Right.
showing this again.
So watch the second
The first thing I want to say is that when he's little, look at how the facilitators like over him, like they look like they're having a good time. He's a charming little boy,
Yes.
but she's
Yeah.
like, I'm a big giant thing over the top of you in the corner. It's so okay. Here,
I wanted to mention the stencils. They have a stencil with all of the letters in it, and then they have another set that just has a limited stencil. So when the person is pointing, they might point to an M and the person's not sure because it doesn't make sense for the word that they're supposedly spelling out. The facilitator will pick up a stencil with fewer words in it, but makes sense with the M now. They have to figure out a word that goes with the M. So that pick up the stencil that has an O in it, and those are bigger letters and fewer selections. And guess what? Ooh, they'll pick an O. You know, and so the clients, I've never seen in all the videos that I've watched, I've never seen a client pick up their own stencil.
Yeah, I
So
would
if
use
they
this
were-
stencil now.
Yep. So if they were actually communicating, why don't they pick up their own stencil?
And hand it to him and say, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm ready to communicate now.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So watch the body movements on these and the cues that you're talking about. Okay, so look.
So cute.
Oh, I've got to hit the button. Otherwise, we're just staring at it for a while.
It's cute.
I love that smile.
Yeah.
He does,
He picks
unlike
it.
some of the other ones, he does look like he's having fun.
Yeah.
He just looks like a personable child. But look at how she leans in and she's just like,
Good. Keep going.
You know what's
Finger.
her
yeah.
hand?
oh yeah.
Back to the B. I. Good boy. T. S. Rabbits. A. N. D.
And she probably doesn't even know she's doing that,
And.
as you say.
R. Let's go double R. Good boy. Rabbits and parrots. So my
See, she's like, just pulls it away. We're done.
behind themselves without even
Yeah.
moving.
But there's a debate. I've never taken a spelling to communicate or a rapid prompting method training. I have taken the facilitated communication training. I have CEUs for that. I got a certificate. So I suspect with rapid prompting method and spelling to communicate, the hand signals are quite regular with, and that's not something that I was taught as a facilitator for the traditional touch-based. So I think that you're getting away from we always try to say, well, the facilitators aren't always aware of the cueing that they're doing, but the hand signals are so regular with spelling to communicate people and rapid prompting method people. I think we're starting to have to get away from saying that those are not deliberate, because, and the other thing is they'll hold them Sometimes they'll hold them like close to their face. Sometimes they'll hold them down below, like the letterboard is up here, but and they've got the camera angle. And you can just barely catch the hand signals just out of camera range, or just barely in camera range. So to me, that there's a question about how deliberate that really is. And I would suspect that, and the vocalizations, like up, S and, E and, N and so what are all those vocalizations and the hand signals actually mean? Or they'll go like this, or I've seen, Sue Finesse, one of the people here, will put her hand in a fist and the person won't select a letter, but then she opens it up, or maybe two, or moves it this way, or, so I suspect, and I haven't taken the training, but I suspect that those hand signals do actually mean something.
Interesting. So interesting, Janyce.
I mean, it could have, it quite possibly could have evolved without really knowing, but as the training
Others.
has solidified, it's become part of the training. So it could be that the original facilitators, if they moved their head this way and the kid pointed to a letter over here, then that was more instinctual and not deliberate. But now, as these are trained facilitators, supposedly trained facilitators, so why are they using the same hand signals? Or I've seen some that will use like almost like an ASL alphabet with their hands, and that signals which letters to touch on the letterboard. And that actually always is within the client's peripheral range. So that's a question that I have. I can't answer that from personal experience, but I've seen it in enough videos to wonder how deliberate those hand signals are.
He was not always looking at the board in this one too. I just want to point that out. There's a few times that he's glancing away or looking at his mum.
I don't think that he's tapping the board when he looks away.
I think it's much better than it was with some of the others.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next here. Let's see. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, what the
And that's
heck?
what makes some of these harder, because some of the individuals are actually quite good at looking at the board and pointing on cue.
These are people have been doing this with their parent or whomever for
Yeah,
years. This is
exactly.
not, yeah.
Behind themselves.
Part of the routine.
Yeah.
Do you? Okay. What's next? C A. Good. T I O. Education. I is. Education is. W. Which one? H A T. What? Y O.
This is the same kid? Different kid.
I think this is a different person.
Yeah, different person.
Yeah,
So we didn't get a
that was Matthew.
Matthew is education is
Istanbul.
what was the word?
It's just I'm going back to that joke because she goes IS and assumes it's the word is instead of Istanbul.
Right.
I-
What was the letter he chooses after is?
W, but he has a little break first, so maybe that indicates that that's the end of the word.
So yeah, I'm looking at it. I mean, it gets to be like psychics explained to being psychic sex planed. It's like, where do you divide the letters at?
Yep.
Until you have all the letters, if there's no spaces in between it, how do you know what the sentence
Because
is?
it really could be he's trying to say cat ion is.
I thought he said cat
Yeah.
because where the video starts. So I was like, oh, where'd you get education? Cat.
Well, that brings up another question, like where is their knowledge of sentence structure coming from if they don't actually pause in between words, or I know some letterboards actually have periods and exclamation points and question marks and stuff,
That would make sense.
and very rarely see people actually using that. So how do they know all these sentence structure, like written the rules of written language, when they're coming up with these sentences. I'm confused about that. I don't, and that definitely, it's not in the training that I had, and it's not in the stuff that I've read so far about rapid prompting method and spelling to communicate. It's not actually in that it may be, I just haven't found it yet, but I don't see the teaching of linguistics and sentence structures in their literature, and that's something that's actually missing. I mean, another plug for Katie's book. This is all about language structures and how it affects people with autism, and how it affects vocabulary development, and how it affects social language, and all that kind of builds on each other. And none of that, if you're really dealing with people who are autistic, none of that is evident in the facilitated communication training in any of its variants, at least that I've found so far. So that would be a big question that I would have for facilitators.
All right, let's see. Oh my goodness. This is like torture.
Yes.
Kids are being tortured. Wait, what was that? That was it? Let me back up.
So this is him little, and then they'll show him
This
again
guy.
a little bit bigger.
This is Matthew.
Which one? Very good. That's a big fish. Jumping around.
He's doing the pointing to choices thing.
No? Then what
Yeah.
would you say? Magpies like E. Okay, good. All the way down there. V. E. You're good. R. Every. I was wondering if you can do anything, but yeah, I like this word. T. The thing.
Watch your left hand.
So let me write down what you've done. E. V. E. R. Y. Every. T. H. Good. What's next? I. N. That's it. You're just there. You're just there. You can do it. G.
Okay, so Alex, just explain.
What the heck? He's imprisoned in that corner. He cannot get up. He'd have to sink into his seat and go under the table to get out of that situation. He is imprisoned in that corner by that woman.
And her arm moved a lot, her body moved a lot. And I really noticed how much she even, it's hard to tell if the board is moving because he's pulling it back. But I noticed in all her videos, it always moves toward, towards the person. I think that's what it is. And you don't know if it's her. It's like a magic trick. Who's actually doing it? Is it the kid or is it her? In this video, it looks like it's her. In the other ones, it looks like it was the kid pulling it. But because it keeps coming up, I'm like kind of like your hand signals. I'm now thinking, huh.
There's two letter boards on this table. There's a letter board and there's one with numbers.
Right.
So one is like you point to, and one is like you use a pencil to push in the. Yeah. It's a stencil.
I think the stages are pointing to choices, and then the stencils, and then they move to a plastic letterboard, and then they move to a keyboard. Now, if these people really have independent motor skills, like the whole thing with spelling to communicate as opposed to, or rapid prompting method, as opposed to the touch-based, is that the person does actually have the motor skills to point to a letterboard, right? So why don't they just go right to the keyboard? Why do they have to go through all these different stages if it wasn't just a behavior modification program?
So why doesn't he just, so if he wanted to start doing something with numbers, okay, wait.
Oh, they're also geniuses with numbers too. They don't have to.
Does he reach out to the thing and say, I want to do numbers now? And here's a thought. If, like, when you're texting somebody, this language they have, you use B4, you use a B, and you use a 4. You're using numbers as words. That would be quicker than what's going on. But do these children, these clients, have that kind of comprehension that the number 4 also means the word FOUR or FOR Because
Not if they're truly autistic.
so they're not, but these are geniuses, right? They're able to
Right.
go to college.
Right.
So why, that would be a lot faster to learn how to communicate.
I mean, I know what you're
with-
saying.
with like this texting kind of shorthand. Than
Right.
spelling out the
Right.
word education, education. I mean, there's got to be simpler ways of if these are genius kids, to be able to say education with using numbers or emojis, or why aren't they using emojis? That'd be really quick.
That's called like picture exchange system, or like the legitimate augmentative and alternative communication devices.
Those are real facilitated communication devices.
True. Oh yeah, we were going to talk about the difference between facilitated communication and facilitated communication.
That's
I'm gonna
right.
let you
So-
do that while I mute myself.
Okay. I think they purposefully chose facilitated communication to blur the lines. There's facilitated communication, which is legitimate, like helping somebody learn how to use communication devices or methods or techniques that fit their individual needs. That's what everybody that I know who's in that field is doing. You know, they're trying to figure out ways that individuals can communicate to the best of their ability, fitting their physical and intellectual
Can I give an
abilities.
example? A specific example that I've been involved in now. I, of course, was a high school teacher, so I tended to see higher functioning people, students. But there are people who have difficulty with reading for whatever reason it may be. So I, for quite a few years, was a reader in their diploma exams in grade 12. I'm facilitating their communication by reading to them, and they still do the test. And they always put you into a field where you have no idea what the question is talking about. Like I would do physics or biology or history. A lot of the history is social studies stuff. I have no clue. And I just read all the questions and all the answers, and they'd have to pick A, B, C, or D. And I've also been a scribe. So they will say to me what they want to say, and I type it for them.
Right.
So I would say those are legitimate communication facilitations that actually do occur. But of course, there's much more for much more complex kids.
Sure. There's eye tracking devices. There's there are it's called the picture exchange system, where the person's, like a cup would be a picture of a cup, and
they'd point
or
to-
milk or bread or cookie or whatever would be lined up, and they would learn how to,
Like
you know, like
emojis.
if they wanted a cookie, they would get the picture of a cookie and bring it to you, give you the picture, and you'd give them the cookie. So that's all independent communication, right?
Yeah. And we're not
yeah.
saying we don't want to help kids. This is
Right.
not what this is about.
This is not help.
Yeah.
These kids do not want to be sitting at a table in a corner, imprisoned by some woman who's holding a plastic thing in front of their face, and they have to hold a pencil. They have other things they want to do. And it is not sitting there and having, no,
Well,
come
even
on
if it's
now.
not what they want to do, there are therapies that have been proven to be more effective. And I
Well,
think
they
are
get
right.
into school.
Period.
Do you think they really want to be in a classroom? No, they're not. There's no benefit to that. They probably would rather be out playing with a ball or a puppy or something, or having a cookie. But they certainly don't. It's cruel to be putting these kids through a school system where you're in a classroom where there's a teacher and they're supposed to be some sort of quiet. You know, they're not. They're disrupting the rest of the class. You know, of course, we're supposed to be kind and just ignore them doing that. But that's not helpful to the other students in the class. That'd be so distracting. There's no way, if I was a student in that classroom, I would not be watching what's going on. I'd be like just constantly like this.
But I don't think that's the same thing as what's happening here. And I've seen integration done very well. I've
Yeah.
also seen it done poorly, mostly because of lack of funding and help.
Yeah.
That's actually the reason.
Right.
But these kids here that are in these videos, I do not think would be in a regular classroom.
No, but they go to
They put them.
college. They're in
College,
a
but-
regular classroom because they're going through school.
Yeah. There's a movie that I'm looking at right now, short film called Axel. And it was a situation in New Hampshire, I think in 2013. So it's like an older video, but they fully integrated this child into the fifth grade classroom using facilitated communication. And a lot of what they've shown on, it's just a short film. It's only like maybe 15 or 18 minutes long, but most of the time the kid is stimming. He's got a plastic thing that he's smelling and rolling up. And I didn't really see that he was benefiting in terms of either socially interacting. Well, there were a few scenes where some of the students were facilitating with him, which also brings up the question of training and who's supposed to be doing facilitated communication. If it's actually like if you need to be a specialist to do it. But yeah, I mean, there are times when inclusion is appropriate, and then there are times like with facilitated communication. Obviously this child in this movie kept bolting, and like that's communication. Like this is too much,
Out of here.
and so we were talking about facilitated communication in the way Adrienne was explaining, and then there's facilitated communication with this technique of rapid prompting method, spelling to communicate, where there's no point at which with legitimate facilitation, at some point the assistant removes themselves in some way from the situation, and the student is able to show mastery of the particular skill that's being taught. Right. So with facilitated communication, that never happens. And so the facilitator may, in traditional touch-based facilitated communication, they call fading, going from the wrist to the shoulder, to the elbow, to the shirt sleeve, but the facilitator is always tugging or moving or whatever. Even sitting beside now with spelling to communicate and rapid prompting method. The whole thing is, oh, well, we're not touching the student. Well, that's debatable, because sometimes under the table they kick the kid in the shins or whatever. But they even in the best case scenario with spelling to communicate and rapid prompting method, the facilitator is holding the board or sitting beside them and moving their body or doing those hand signals. If you remove the facilitator, the student's ability to spell in a sophisticated way is going to be reduced or be non-existent. So that's the difference between facilitated communication that's legitimate and facilitated communication that we're talking about with these techniques, is that the facilitator influence is a huge question about the authenticity of the FC generated messages. With legitimate facilitated communication, there's no question at all that the communications are coming from the client, because the assistant is removed from that situation. Adrienne, you had a situation where you didn't know the topic.
Correct.
And that hardly ever happens with facilitated communication. But there was a lawsuit a few years ago where the clients were in the United States, they moved to Israel, and all of a sudden the kid could facilitate in Hebrew. And the parents were like, we haven't exposed our child to Hebrew. There's no way that he knows Hebrew. It must have come from the facilitator. And so, and there's also there's a movie called A Mother's Courage, where it shows the success of a student I forget if he was from Norway or he was from a not an English speaking country, came to work with Soma, and within weeks he was facilitating in English. And he was never taught. There was English in the household, and that's how they rationalized it away. But he was never taught English. You know, like his native language was not English.
That's so
And
interesting.
so, and that still doesn't stop them. I mean, they did the movie, and it was like pro FC movie, and they were like, oh woo,
We had
we're
one,
so excited about this.
It's
I remember
interesting.
that spoke Spanish.
Oh my
Some
God.
facilitators were Spanish speakers and some weren't. The child didn't understand Spanish, but was able to facilitate quite well in Spanish when the facilitator was a Spanish
Right,
speaking.
right,
And the parent goes, well, wait, we don't speak Spanish.
right.
It's so interesting that Susan brought up this integration thing, because when I was listening to what you were saying about people graduating from high school and university, etc., I heard Janyce say one of them was like an online. That made sense to me. Putting them
Yeah,
in
well, that makes sense.
the
Yeah.
classroom.
No, they're in the classroom.
Really
Absolutely
surprised.
in the
Oberlin
classroom.
College.
Yeah, she said, and Janice said earlier that the student was in the back of the classroom doing jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah.
So no,
But no.
it's online.
There's two movies that
Yeah.
show that. Autism is a World, where the Whittier College
What was it,
graduated, and the
Deej?
person who was facilitating also took the classes with the person being facilitated. And then there's another one called Deej, D-E-E-J, and he ended up, that followed him in his high school to Oberlin College, and he ended up getting a degree from Oberlin College, and he was being facilitated. And he had his mother, and he had several others that attended class with him using facilitated communication.
They're in the
So
classroom.
they're in the classroom.
Absolutely in
Do
the
they get
classroom.
psychologists sign off on these methodologies?
Yes, there are some pro FC
I was going to say
psychologists.
that's where the legal thing comes into play. If you have an expert, a real expert who can say, yes, this is what they need.
Yeah,
Like my schools are they're
Individual learning plans are written for these students, and this
Yeah.
is
yeah, but usually the individual learning plan has to come from either a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist.
Yeah.
A professional.
Didn't
It
somebody
can't
just
come from like somebody who is a facilitated communicator, if that makes sense, unless they're also a psychologist or a doctor or a medical
they
doctor.
did a high school just get sued for this, or a
Yes.
parents wanted to use it?
Yep, there was a
We're not
case
using this?
in Pennsylvania where
Wow.
the parents wanted to use spelling to communicate in the classroom, and the school system, they actually had some of their staff go to a training, and the facilitator that trained them couldn't present any scientific evidence of proof. She even said in the training that there's none of their clients have achieved independent communication. But there were some legal things that they had to work through. And what ended up happening with that is that the parents, they lost the first case under IDEA because basically it came down to a private entity can't tell a school system which techniques to use, and that they were providing alternative and augmentative communication, special ed programming for the child that qualified, and they didn't. The IDEA says you don't have to use a disproven or unproven method to replace something, even if it's their quote unquote preferred form of communication. And so they appealed it. The parents lost that. Also, American Speech Language Hearing Association and several other major organizations oppose the use of facilitated communication and rapid prompting method because of prompt dependency, facilitator control, lack of scientific evidence, potential harms. So those organizations also played a big role in the court case. So they appealed it. The parents appealed it, and they said, well, we want to put into evidence proof that facilitated communication or spelling to communication works. So the school system said, okay, and they took the staff took some questions. The kid was mainstreamed. He actually did have some abilities. He could type on his own, but he was mainstreamed in a class, and they took questions from that class and took it to the spelling to communicate session. And the facilitator happened to not know the answers to the questions that were being asked. And so I forgot what they had a word for it, like it was a big kerfuffle or something, you know, like they had a word for like that. And so the facilitator asked, this is all in the court documents, the facilitator asked for the answer key. And so the teachers gave him the answer key, and guess what happened to the facilitated communication messages? He was answering the questions perfectly. And so they did their own, like I don't think they meant to, but they did their own double-blind testing. And then also the parents had videotaped themselves working with the student, and there was obvious visual cues similar to the ones that we've been looking at today. And the judge was like, no way, you know, in these 2 points, you know, I can see facilitator cueing, and he didn't pass the double-blind testing. And that was the parents' proof that FC worked. So they really believed this enough to be suing the school systems.
You
I'm
would
glad
think
to hear
that
that they didn't win.
yeah, it would
So
be
far-
nice to have if they had handed them the wrong answers.
See, where that could get sticky is if they do have like a psychiatrist who says, yes, this is what the student.
Well, they did. In that case, the school system did testing, and the parents were
They had
requesting for the IEP to be updated because he was showing such a huge jump in academic abilities. So the school system did their own testing, and then I believe they went through with it. I think there was some
sad when you hear that there are experts that are buying into this. I think
That's why they
where
can't challenge it.
really
because
harmful.
Right.
Somebody's already written
but then
off on this.
but then the private facilitator used facilitated communication during the testing, and the school argued that skews the standardized scores, because when you add facilitated communication into a testing situation where someone's supposed to be doing the tasks independently, that now you can't, those scores are meaningless because that's not what that test was designed for. And so they won on that point as well. The school system was, and there's the laws, there's a case in Seattle right now that I don't know if it's gone to court yet, but it was in the newspapers that the family was really upset and claiming discrimination, and for the same reasons. And I looked into there's a lot of states have guidelines for their education, the special education programs, and many of them go along with the IDEA, Individual Disabilities Education Act, in regards to what qualifies as scientific evidence, and facilitated communication doesn't fit under that guideline. So far, when school systems have been sued in terms of getting spelling to communicate into the classrooms, they've failed so far, which is good.
It's the precedence.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. Ready?
I
Y'all
think we
sit
might be
down?
done with
We think we're
there's
done.
one at the end, and then they do a little explanation of rapid prompting method, and then they do another one at the very end.
Another explanation or
student.
another video?
I can't remember where we're at.
What do you want me to show the whole
Wherever
thing?
we're at. Yeah,
Okay.
whatever the next section is.
Okay.
Gee.
Okay, so Alex, just explain a little bit more about what was happening in those videos.
Oh yeah, I'll
So
explain.
each of those sessions would have involved a lesson, teaching age appropriate information, and would have involved me working with the student to develop a motor output. So because speech and language are different parts of the brain, a person's speech and even motor skills might not be demonstrating the whole picture of what they're thinking and all of their comprehension. So we're developing a new output method so they are able to demonstrate understanding. And you see such a range of students doing this. So in the beginning, we saw more people that would be classed as non-verbal, and we'd work on that language motor link. But now we're seeing just as many verbal students who might have echolalia, who might have quite functional language, or speech, who might be able to say some things repeated, even a lot of social speech, but there's still a limit on it. Through RPM, they're able to express so much more.
And so can you just, is it just a case of picking up a letterboard, you know, and just getting the child to just respond by just spelling out? Do they have to be able to spell even?
No, they don't have to be able to spell. We can teach all of that, but it is a little bit more technical than simply holding up a board or presenting your computer to them. If it was that easy, then
Yeah.
we wouldn't need RPM.
Yeah, and you know, I'll be honest, you know, we've had to work daily with my son, you know, really helping him to build up the skills that he needs to enable him to do that. But so it's not easy, but equally the work really pays off. It really pays dividends.
Yeah, and some parents do 5 minutes a day. Some parents who might do 40 minutes a day. Some parents run a home program. It's brilliant for that. So whatever your situation, it probably can fit in somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so you know, we'd really like to see you. If you come along to the event, it would be great to meet you. We can show you some more videos. We can answer any questions that you've got. You know, we'd really like to help to unlock your child's voice.
Thank you. And just to finish off this clip, we'll share one of our students, Mandeep.
So they have another one, but we should talk about what they've just said first.
Questions? Hands up, all those people out there who have questions. I'd like to get some answers to a lot of things, like how would these people like to be put in a little corner and have some larger person like glomming onto them and telling them what to do and grabbing their hand and putting a pencil in their hand?
What I think, I'm going to go the other way. They're charismatic, well-spoken, come across as very caring. Like the young girl comes across as having a lot of patience and just dealing very calmly with these kids. And it reminds me a lot of psychics. Well-spoken, charismatic, caring. It's, you know, very much the same thing. So those were my notes from when I watched that.
Yep. Yeah, well, and they use sciencey sounding word like speech language, but they don't talk anything about comprehension skills, or, you know, the difference between written and spoken language, or they don't talk about the fact.
What are they not
what's
talking
missing?
about?
Yeah. They don't talk about, they want you to think that it's just a motor problem. Autism is just, and they also say Down syndrome is just a motor problem. So
I went to Janice and I went to a lecture that they were trying to get facilitated communication RPM used in the Down syndrome community.
Right. So I mean they need to
It's
expand
like,
their
what?
base. Yeah. So they want you to think that these problems with communication can be solved with just because it's a motor problem. And there are students that do have motor it's not a defining factor of autism, but there are students that have I learned this from Dr. Howard Shane from Boston Children's Hospital. He actually worked with Stephen Hawking to develop, I mean, that's the level that he's at, to develop communication system. And he said, all you need is to be able to twitch a muscle, blink an eye, or blow into a straw. And there's some sort of communication device that they can find for you that's going to work. So why do you have to have someone hold your hand? you know, and like people can discount me or take my, you know, whatever. They can either support me or not support me. But when Howard Shane says, you know, like this is his job and he's done years and years and 30 something years of research and lived it.
And those people are living independently with whatever method of communication that they've worked together to.
His team, you know, there's when computers used to be really huge.
Yeah.
His team was one of the first in the country to actually screw one of those onto, they were working with people with cerebral palsy, like huge motor problems. And they screwed one of those onto his wheelchair, you know, like almost tipping it over. And I mean, I'm just adding that for drama, but you know what I mean? It was a big thing. It wasn't like a little iPhone. And he was able to communicate like truly independently. And there's I think there's a sample of that on some of Howard Shane's work on Prisoners of Silence. And so their approach to saying that autism is a motor planning problem comes from having to explain why FC is necessary. And they leave out a lot of information about how language is learned and the difference between speech and language and communication. There's some nuances in there that they completely dismiss. And they also don't, on their studies, say that the American Speech Language Hearing Association came out in 2018 with an opposition statement opposing rapid prompting method. Technically, there are no studies that disprove rapid prompting method because the people promoting rapid prompting method won't participate in the double-blind testing, but there's enough overlap between rapid prompting method and facilitated communication, the touch-based, which has been disproven, that also the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities also in 2000, I think it was 2018 or 2019, also came out against rapid prompting method and spelling to communicate for the same reasons, you know. And they're also concerned about prompt dependency. Like there's no steps in rapid prompting method or spelling to communicate to disengage the facilitator from the person being facilitated. And that's a huge concern. You have to have that step, otherwise it's not independent communication. And the concern is that even that when we saw the person doing the pointing choices, they would consider that independent communication. Like, are you upset because this is a new place, or you don't want to do this activity? And whichever one they pick, they'll say that came from the student. Right. And the facilitator was the one that wrote those two options on the piece of paper, but they'll say that the student communicated that independently because they just happened to pick the left or the right hand one.
I'm happy because it's a nice day also as a choice.
Right.
This
And
woman,
if you look at a lot of the messages, I mean, there was some my voice is making me look like I don't understand, or there was one that said something about being really happy about communicating. I don't see it in my notes right off, but
education.
I am feeling awesome about my learning.
Yeah.
And so they, regardless of what stage they are at in the rapid prompting method training, right from the very beginning, they attribute those messages to the student as being independent, even though at whatever stage they're still depending on the facilitator. So they kind of,
how are they getting these weird statements about how much important education is, etc.? It's very odd to me because I don't recall, I mean, I've been in a lot of classrooms, grade kindergarten all the way through to grade 12, and those are not typical statements that you hear. So I'm wondering why.
I'm
those-
feeling awesome about my training.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Send
Well,
no
there
child
was
ever.
there's a movie called Spellers that's out. It's a spelling to communicate movie, and one of the students is asked. I did a video. This will come out soon. A video critique. One of the students is asked, "Can you control your thoughts?" Well, most of the people I asked, like unofficially, unscientifically, said no. I mean, or I don't know, or maybe
Sometimes. Yeah.
sometimes. Well, the facilitated answer was, I am a rudderless ship in a sea of thoughts. That was the answer to the person's question about can you control your thoughts?
But no
And
person.
so, and this is, like they think this is
I guess
know-
it's because they're on the autistic spectrum that they have these
Poetry
genius
answers, yeah.
poetry.
Yes.
And I've known lots of kids on the autistic spectrum, and some of them do come out with some pretty amazing things, but nothing like that. But I guess it's always possible.
They're a rudderless ship in an ocean of misinformation or whatever.
Yeah, an
She
ocean
said-
of
She
misinformation.
said this younger woman, she is that Alex, the younger woman?
Yes.
Okay, the younger facilitator. She
Yeah.
said something about, well, we couldn't, I like this. She just breezed through this. Well, we couldn't just leave them with a computer because then that would be like really
I
easy.
know.
Or something like that. I thought, well, isn't that the point, to just leave, if they can type and stuff, just leave them with a computer and go do your yard work
It
or
does
fold
seem to
laundry
be
or whatever.
totally a waste of time when you have computers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know- And they have all kinds of computers, like specifically for communication needs. In my youngest used them in school, and this is a long time ago now. So I can imagine what's out there now.
they
you
can
know,
get full words, or like we said, they could
Full
have
sentences.
photographs of things like, and then they could have the child just sit there and just type out by not even like keyboards, but like
Yeah.
Yep.
images. And what is it? Is it Howard Shane that says there's nothing wrong with these kids' motor skills? You put a plate of potato chips on in front of them, and they're going to
Yeah.
pick up every single little bit, even the little.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with their motor skills.
Right.
They're
Right.
fine.
So people can, these are all from examples from Pro FC films. They can paint, they can hold the paintbrush and paint. They can shave. They can
Feed themselves.
dress themselves. They can
Yeah,
feed
we seen him go
themselves.
into the kitchen, that last one of those ones that he got
Yeah.
like a pudding cup, opened it up, took a spoon, was sitting there eating it.
Yeah.
It's not problems with your motor.
Open a
skills.
package of cheese, like the string cheese, they can open that by themselves. They can, they're fine, and gross motor skills are there may be some issues, but for the most part, individuals with autism can, or you just make the letterboard bigger, or you whatever.
Images or
There's some
something.
that's what adaptations are for, like those are available. So yeah, the big question is why can't they, why do they need this reminds me of another study. This was somebody that was pro FC, worked to develop a mechanical arm for the person because they wanted to test whether it was the human touch or the actual physical support, like facilitators claim. And they could do this, but they didn't know how to type, so it's only that human connection that makes facilitated communication work.
So let's look at this last video real quick. Because Adrienne, I think, has to leave, and I'd like to know what she says before she leaves. So
This has been a blast, by the way. I'm really enjoying this thing.
I really appreciate your feedback.
I love doing this. This, to me, it's fun, but
Well, it's so informative. Sorry.
Any comprehension at all. In fact,
I
in
keep
school,
looking at
he was
this
on
woman
P-level,
thinking, how would you like to be shoved in
type
the corner?
work, even though he was around 12 when he started RPM, and now he's doing over GCSE level work. Here he is.
Y-O, Y-O, U,
And that's the end of that. Thank goodness. I wish it was the end of it.
I think there was an edit in that. I wonder, I'd like to go back. I just noticed it, maybe.
Where?
Not sure, but it looks like there might have been an edit in that. So I don't even know if the letters that he was supposedly picking were all in without a break, but
I'm looking at it and I'll see.
may or may not
Okay.
have, may or may not in that one, but
Again, shoved in a corner. Head
He
counseling.
looked happy. He was smiling the whole time. It was
He
quite
looks like an adorable, wonderful person.
yeah.
But no, this is just cruel.
See, is he doing GSC, whatever they call it, the college level work? So here's my question for the end. I know we're like need to wind up. So what harm can rapid prompting method do? You know, like what's the harm? Why shouldn't you try it? I mean, that's what this video was for, right?
yeah.
That's what they wanted you to.
How
That's
long
what they
do we
wanted you to
have
believe
to
at the end of
talk?
this.
We've talked
I
about
mean-
a lot of the harms already, I think, which is
financial,
yeah,
time, wasted resources. Kid could actually get some kind of help somewhere.
real help is not
Cruelty,
getting happen. I think is a big one.
shoving them in a corner, wasting. Oh my gosh. I want to know, does this thing, this is 2 years old. Does this group still exist? And did they,
I believe they
were
do.
they
Yes.
successful?
I know Sue Finesse, I think is how she pronounces her name. She's got a current YouTube video, a YouTube channel that under her name that shows
Mhm.
her and her son
Right.
using rapid prompting method.
It still
She-
exists. 397 subscribers, but their videos are still coming out. Well, the last one was 6 months ago. So
Just even the
obviously
false
it's-
allegations. That's a huge one too.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
false
there
yeah.
actually was, I know of two. One just got settled because the people accusing the other person would not submit to a test, a court-ordered test. So they pulled out. So they don't believe in rapid prompting method enough
Right.
to, even if they think somebody is sexually or physically assaulting their child, they don't believe in it enough to actually prove authorship. That's what that message says.
Your story about Soma and her son and what all of a sudden the messages to the father were, that's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah,
Oh.
that actually happens more than makes the headlines. A lot of times they don't. A lot of times these cases, some of the cases get settled fairly early on, but I also know of a situation where the person was jailed for a year
Mhm.
before. It was 8 months until he actually found one of my psych-on talk that I did in 2019. And then he got in touch with me and we got him in touch with some people who could help out as expert witnesses. And his
Life is
case,
ruined. This
he
father's
was-
life is ruined. Even though he was proved to be innocent, somebody's always going to say there must have been something going on.
fortunately for this person, the courts expunged his records and cleared his name.
But there's going to be whispers in the community for years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that doesn't stop the harms. There's also a hope an ongoing case in terms of suing the people involved with the false
They need to be
allegations.
sued off their ass. So the MyQAC, I wanted to mention that website that the video we watched. It's the Queen Alexandra College. This is a college. And
Yeah.
it says that they help people, leading national residential college for people with disabilities age 16 above. In other words, residential, they have that corner just waiting for all these kids at their facility. Come to my college. Here's your corner. Scary.
Yeah.
So we should sum up quickly. Adrienne?
Fascinating couple hours. I think we could have gone on for another couple. Good thing I had a vet appointment.
There's more videos if you want to do more.
Well,
was-
I
it
find
was
this all
fascinating.
interesting, yeah. But oh my gosh. And I didn't have to watch these things beforehand. It just makes me
I'm glad I
angry.
did, because I caught up on the window thing, and I'm not that familiar. I haven't seen that many. I've seen Janice's talks, but I haven't actually watched a lot of the videos. So it was really enlightening, very educational. And the relationship to psychics that you guys made, I think is
Mm.
fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's big. And Tourette's syndrome, to the whole autism spectrum.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's all interrelated. People
Yep.
desperately want to believe something, and they're willing to just completely not look at the evidence when
Yep.
it's right there in front of them. Common sense. That's how desperate and vulnerable these parents probably feel. And they're being thrown a magic pill. You could go through the long haul of actually giving your child real scientific help, but they will never end up being
And I think
where they
accepting your
want them to be.
child where they're at. I mean, that's a hard thing to do sometimes, but we need to be able to accept our children where they are at.
Yeah, help
And
them
be
as
okay
best you
with
can,
that.
but they'll never
Yeah.
be what you probably expected for
Hmm.
your child. The great hope. Sorry, but no. Janice, you
Yeah,
got
I see
something
it
to
as a
sum up on?
coping strategy.
Mhm.
So,
Definitely as a coping
so this was
strategy.
helpful.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I learned some things from you as well. You know, I'm in it. I mean, I do something with facilitated communication almost every day. So it's always really helpful for me to hear from people who aren't in it as much as I am. You know, it always expands my understanding of the situation. And I happen to be very fortunate to have a lot of people from around the world that are working in the field and come at it from a speech and language perspective, a linguistic perspective, a psychological perspective, a parent perspective. So there's a part of me that can't believe that over 30 years, I'm still talking about facilitated communication, but I guess the good side, you know, the upside is that I've learned a ton
Yeah,
about
with the hub,
lots of
Janice,
different
with
subjects.
a hub, you have pulled in people from all different areas. So for the expertise, it's just been like all coming down to Janice. And so we need you to be the leader in this, even though
I hate it.
well,
I'd
yeah,
much rather be behind the scenes.
but
Like,
that's
I don't mind
sorry,
like helping people with research and this stuff. You know,
it
I'm
needs to be
learning
done.
to like it, but it's not my favorite.
I just
Definitely
see the
not my
harm. I
favorite.
just see just the cruelty to these kids. So for those people who are watching this on YouTube, which I know you are, I hope, let us know in the comments for this video if it's something that you want to see more of, where we're going in and analyzing these kinds of videos, or and doing these discussions where and Janice will respond to all of your questions that you put in the comments. And the website is, for those watching on Facebook, it's FCisNotScience. Please subscribe.
That's the YouTube
YouTube
channel.
channel.
And also our website is facilitatedcommunication.org. So
.org.
if you,
Org.
yeah, .org.
Don't do
So
that
if you don't want to leave a public comment, we do have a contact page on the facilitatedcommunication.org if you'd rather ask questions privately.
And Adrienne, where can they find you?
Oh, so
Snookum
Zone
Studios.
Studios. Yeah, Skookum Studios. Zonegiggler.ca. I have a website, so you can always reach out to me there. Not a problem.
She's often on the Skeptic Zone. I have to record something for the Skeptic Zone right after.
And
we-
if Celestia is still watching after all that, I'm really excited about looking into Barbie with you for the Squaring the
I
Strange
want to
podcast.
go
Got to
to
give a
Barbie.
shout out for
Squaring the
Nice.
Strange, Squaring the
Yep.
Strange podcast. You got to go
Yep.
listen to that too. There's so much going on, you guys. The more education you get, the better. This is not going away just because it's nonsense and because it's harmful. It's going to proliferate and change names and just go right back to it again until this is ground into the dirt with somebody's foot. And it's going to take a legal case, probably multiple legal cases to do it. But in the meantime, we have to educate because they keep coming in again and again using a different name. And we got to hold firm that this is nonsense. So
My advice is to learn about facilitator behaviors and watch the facilitators, because the problem is with the facilitator interference. So the more that you can understand about the cueing and what happens, the less you'll be fooled by what the name is, because they keep changing. Now there's one that's called communication for education, or spelling to or typing to communicate, or
Hand over hand.
hand over hand,
spelling
there's
communicate, yeah. They're always changing
so-
the name. So just
Yeah.
pay attention to what's going on. I can be found at Psychic Sex Planed or Psychics Explained, or you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me at abouttimeproject.org, which is where we kind of have a hub. All right.
Right.
Thank you all.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
It's fun.
So great fun. Thanks for letting us get involved. I really enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
thanks for inviting us, Janice. It was awesome.